Have you ever experienced a day where you slept for 7 or 8 hours, drank your coffee, sat down to work, and yet your mind still felt exhausted? Not the kind of exhaustion that comes from running a marathon or lifting heavy weights, but a deeper kind of tiredness. The kind where even simple tasks feel difficult. The kind where focusing on one thing for more than a few minutes feels impossible. You open your laptop, start a task, and suddenly find yourself checking your phone. You begin reading something important, but your mind drifts away. You want to be productive, but your brain feels slow, foggy, and uncooperative. If this sounds familiar, you're not alone. In fact, millions of people experience this every single day, and most of them have no idea why it's happening. The common explanation is that people are simply working too hard. We often hear that stress, responsibilities, and busy schedules are the reason we feel mentally drained. While those factors certainly play a role, they don't tell the whole story. There are people who work long hours and still maintain sharp focus and high energy. At the same time, there are others who spend much of their day scrolling through social media, watching videos, or jumping between different forms of entertainment, yet they still feel mentally exhausted. This raises an important question. If physical effort isn't always the problem, then what exactly is making our brains feel so tired? Imagine carrying a backpack everywhere you go. At first, it feels light and manageable. Then someone quietly places a book inside. A little later, another book is added, then another. Throughout the day, the weight increases little by little. Because the changes happen gradually, you hardly notice them. But after enough time passes, your shoulders begin to ache, your movements become slower, and you feel exhausted. Your brain works in a surprisingly similar way. Every notification you check, every app you open, every piece of information you consume, and every unfinished thought you carry adds a small amount of mental weight. None of these things seem significant on their own, but together they create a level of cognitive overload that most people never recognize. Think about how the average day begins. For many people, the first thing they do after waking up is reach for their phone. Before their brain has even fully awakened, they are already absorbing messages, headlines, notifications, emails, videos, and updates from dozens of different sources. Within minutes, their attention is being pulled in multiple directions. The brain is forced to switch rapidly from one piece of information to another without ever having a chance to settle down. By the time breakfast is finished, the mind has already processed more information than previous generations might have encountered in an entire morning. The problem is that the human brain was never designed for this constant flood of stimulation. What makes this even more challenging is that many of these distractions are carefully engineered to capture and hold your attention. Every notification, every short video, every endless feed is competing for one thing: your focus. Each time you switch from one task to another, your brain pays a price. You might think you're saving time by multitasking, but research consistently shows that rapidly switching attention actually drains mental energy. Imagine trying to read a book while someone interrupts you every 30 seconds. Eventually, even the simplest chapter would feel exhausting. That is essentially what many people do to their brains every day without realizing it. Another reason your brain feels tired all the time is because modern life rarely allows it to rest. Many people assume that rest simply means not working, but true mental recovery is much deeper than that. Scrolling through social media for 2 hours might feel relaxing, but for your brain, it's often just another form of stimulation. Instead of recovering, your mind continues processing images, videos, opinions, emotions, and information at a rapid pace. It's like expecting a car engine to cool down while keeping it running. The body may be sitting still, but the brain is still working hard. Now consider what happens when this pattern continues day after day. Your attention becomes fragmented, your ability to focus weakens, tasks that once felt easy begin to require more effort, you forget things more often, you struggle to stay present in conversations, you find yourself rereading the same paragraph multiple times because nothing seems to stick. Eventually, you start believing something is wrong with you. You think you've become lazy, unmotivated, or incapable of concentrating. But often, the problem isn't a lack of intelligence or discipline. The problem is that your brain is carrying too much noise.
What makes this situation even more frustrating is that many people respond by trying to force themselves to work harder. They consume more motivational content. They create longer to-do lists. They push themselves to stay productive despite feeling mentally drained. But trying to solve mental exhaustion with more effort is like pressing harder on the gas pedal when the engine is overheating. The issue isn't always effort. Sometimes the issue is recovery. Imagine this. Two people are given the exact same task. One person has a calm, focused mind that has been protected from unnecessary distractions. The other has spent the entire day jumping between notifications, videos, messages, and unfinished thoughts. Even though both individuals have the same intelligence and abilities, their performance will likely be very different. Why? Because mental energy is a resource, and like any resource, it can be depleted. The encouraging news is that the brain is incredibly adaptable. It is not fixed. It is constantly changing in response to your habits, your environment, and your daily choices. The same brain that can become overwhelmed by distractions can also become stronger, clearer, and more focused. Every time you protect your attention, prioritize quality sleep, spend time learning something challenging, exercise your body, or allow your mind to rest, you're teaching your brain a different pattern. Over time, those patterns begin to reshape how you think, feel, and perform. The truth is that most people don't have a motivation problem, they have an attention problem. They don't need more productivity hacks, they need fewer distractions. They don't need to constantly push harder, they need to create an environment where their brain can operate efficiently. Once you understand this, everything starts to make more sense. The mental fog, the lack of focus, the constant exhaustion, these are often signals that your brain is asking for something it desperately needs: clarity, recovery, and protection from endless noise. And perhaps the most important thing to remember is this: a tired brain does not mean a weak brain. It does not mean you are lazy. It does not mean you are incapable of success. It simply means that your most valuable resource has been carrying too much weight for too long. The good news is that weight can be reduced, the distractions can be managed, the focus can be rebuilt, the energy can return. Because your brain is changing every single day. The real question is not whether it is changing. The real question is, what are you training it to become?